Michelle Cox in 2010 urges universities to move away from the deficit model of viewing multilingual students' abilities towards a view which values the different perspectives on writing that multilingual students bring to our institutions. It is in the Writing Center that the tensions are played out on a case-by-case basis, and this raises several questions for the Writing Center director. The first question would be, where do we draw the line for our tutors between facilitation and instruction? By facilitation, of course, we mean how do we ask questions so that students look at their writing as a reader would look at their writing and therefore create answers to these questions, smooth over breaks in logic, expand on their thinking in ways that make it easier for the reader to understand what they're writing. Instruction, on the other hand, as Judith Powers points out in her 2001 essay, speaks to the fact that multilingual students don't know many things that are important about North American writing instruction. Therefore, we have to tell them some of those things. So we're instructing them on practices, on values, on methods, for example, of incorporating research into an essay. And very often, these are things that they wouldn't have access to without that instructive facility. The second question is, how much can we accommodate students' demands that we simply edit their papers? The third question is, how do we prepare tutors to deal with multilingual students' demands and difficulties? They have difficulties in terms of their expectations, in terms of the values that they bring into the Writing Center, in terms of their misunderstandings of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate within academic writing. So how do we prepare tutors to deal with those demands? And finally, how and should we become advocates for multilingual students in the broader academic community by asking for special accommodation for their writing? Tony Silva points out that much of the multilingual writing that we see in the Writing Center is very understandable, has really good solid ideas in it, but very often is couched in imperfect English, imperfect grammar, and imperfect sentence structure. He calls this writing with an accent, and he asks of all of us, how much can we tolerate that writing with an accent in the same way that we tolerate speaking with an accent? So, in order to begin to answer some of these questions, I would like to frame my answers in terms of best practices and in terms of two quotes that I think can help us begin to understand what best practices might look like. The first one is by Asao Inoue in an article that he wrote for the College Conference on Composition in February 2013. And he says, most universities encourage and actively celebrate diversity, but do not know how or are unwilling to address difference. The second quote is from a blog that Rhonda Friesen, manager in the Office of International Relations at the University of Manitoba, entitled "The Tension of Being in the Middle." She says, the common ground proposed will depend on institutional context and priorities, but I suspect that international education practitioners will most often find a solid footing for internationalization in the core mission of the institution and the values of enhancing the quality of education, research, and academic service, the age-old premise of the modern university. So there's much wisdom in these words, but how do we interpret them in terms of the Writing Center and in terms of multilingual students? So I've taken three concepts about language learning from second language acquisition writing and looked at how these might play out in the Writing Center context when dealing with the multilingual students. The first one is the notion of adaptive and non-adaptive help-seeking behaviors. Williams and Takaku say that these are linked to perceptions of high self-efficacy and low self-efficacy. Students with high self-efficacy tend to adopt adaptive help-seeking strategies. In other words, they will look at a context, look at the help that's being provided, and go and seek out the help that will most clearly help them attain the goals that they have. Adaptive help seeking is most often mastery-oriented and linked to goal orientation. Multilingual students tend to be high in self-efficacy, but base that notion on hard work. Because they are also more goal-oriented, they are more likely to seek help and do well on their assignments as a result of the help that they seek. The second notion that I want to look at is the notion of cultural capital that Ilieva demonstrates in her 2012 article. She says that multilingual students achieve acculturation when they perceive that that acculturation is high in cultural capital. But in order to get that cultural capital, they have to adopt cultural tools. Put simply, the adoption of the cultural tools involved in writing successful academic essays can lead to enhanced future possibilities. So if the goal is to get a BA or to get a job in North America or to go on to get an MA, then that's the enhanced future possibility. So the closer the perceived relationship between the cultural tool and the goal that the student has, the more motivated the student will be to attain that cultural tool, to accrue the cultural capital that allows them to attain their goal. The third concept is Ibrahim's concept of personal needs. He reminds us that the attainment of a particular goal must be seen to fulfill those personal needs. In other words, multilingual students need to be personally invested in the assignments that they are doing, not because the teacher has told them to do the assignment, but because doing the assignment will help them change in some fundamental way that they believe in. It has to do with their values, their beliefs, and their behaviors continuum. So what does all this mean for best practices for multilingual students in the Writing Center? Well, I think I'm going to break them down again. It's self-efficacy because multilingual students tend to be high in self-efficacy, they're going to come to the Writing Center, but are going to try to control the consultation. They will very often overestimate their understanding of an assignment and insist on grammar and sentence structure instruction. This is because they underestimate their need for instruction in terms of the assignment itself. So the best practice then for the tutor is to negotiate the terms of the assignment, to make sure that the students do understand the assignment, that the writing that they've done in their assignment matches with the expectations of the professor. And then within that rearticulated formulation of the assignment or of the understanding of the assignment, that the students express themselves well, albeit even if they are still writing with an accent. In other words, some minor grammar errors are not going to affect the mark that they get, but as long as the overall ideas are sound and are in keeping with the expectations of the professor. Because they are also mastery-oriented, however, they may wish to master individual assignments at the expense of learning to become better writers. And of course, this goes against the mission of the Writing Center, which wants to teach students to become better writers through the vehicle of those assignments. Students see cultural capital of getting a good mark, but not the cultural capital of writing well. In other words, they don't know how to use the tool of writing to attain the good mark. They have to learn to see that writing well is a tool with which to get that cultural capital that they want. We have senior multilingual students in the Writing Center to help explain how writing is a cultural tool. How do they do that? First of all, through demonstration. So the students will feel that their struggles are being recognized and that the struggle is worthwhile because it will lead to better marks. We do it in another way as well. We have faculty come into the Writing Center and talk about writing in their discipline, what their expectations are for writing. The other thing that we do is that we go into classrooms and we talk to the students about a particular assignment that they're doing within that classroom. Usually we're invited in by the faculty, and the faculty sit there while we talk about how to approach the writing of a particular assignment. For the multilingual students, this is really important because, again, the professors are sanctioning what we are talking about in terms of good academic North American writing. The final thing I wanted to address is personal needs, that students aren't going to come to the Writing Center, they are not going to adopt these cultural tools unless those tools meet their immediate needs. And some of those immediate needs are that the assignments that they are doing are real, that the help that they get is immediate, that they are given a second chance when they need it, and that there is some sort of validation of their unique position within the North American academic community. So how do we do all of that? Well, we do help with real assignments and not just the academic assignments that students do. For example, their personal statements. They have to write personal statements often for jobs that they are applying for or for applications to master's programs. So we help them with that. We also have a lot of just-in-time services. We do have drop-ins. If any of our writing tutors are free and someone walks into the center, very often multilingual students make their first visit a sort of drop-in, then those tutors will take them and talk to them, provided that they're not busy with someone else. The second chance is that we work very closely with professors so that when multilingual students fall into the pit of plagiarism, very often professors will waive the failing mark or the penalties provided that the students come to the Writing Center and get help to turn that inappropriate referencing into appropriate referencing and weave in some of their own ideas, which they very often can explain to us but haven't put into their writing. So that second chance is really important, and it's also a validation of their unique position within the community. So these are some of the things that I've instituted in my own writing center. I'm sure many of you have similar things. The best practices are based on theory, and that theory of cultural capital, of adopting cultural tools, and of identifying the personal needs of the multilingual students. So thank you very much.